You're listening to Some Roses Are Red, presented by 79.7. Thank you again for joining us. This is John for Some Roses Are Red, and today my guest is the fantastic, amazing Cree Myles. So, Cree agreed to join us for today's topic. Today is still the month of April, so we're talking about the topic of representation for the month of April, and representation we're covering with the subtopic, if you will, how do I fit in? So I thought that who better to speak with than Miss Cree Myles, and the reason for that, I like to tell people the reasons why I asked him to be on the show. I didn't talk to her beforehand about this, but the reason that I asked people to be on the show is because they are, I think they're great thinkers. I admire not so much what people say, but how they come to the processes that they come to. So for Cree, what I wrote down here for as far as the reason for having her on the show. First, I'll give a brief little bio here. Again, I don't like to do bios just because I think you always end up pigeonholing people. So I think that people are much bigger than the bios that we give them. So this is by no means the full encompassing bio of Cree Myles. This is just a little blurb of what I wrote down. But of course, throughout the conversation here, I imagine that we will learn a little bit more about Cree, because I know her for about 2 years, 3 years, something like that. But we'll get to know her those in listener land, if you will. So in addition to being a popular YouTube video maker, 53,000 views so far for Beyonce's Drunk in Love, if you're checking, Cree Myles is an Alverno College alum, educator. She's a singer-songwriter, host of You Better Effin' Read, which is an online brief visual book review series. That's on Instagram and also on YouTube. In addition to the newly married and soon-to-be mom, part due, number 2, for the second go-around. And not too many weeks from now, actually. Not too many weeks.
Not enough.
Okay. Not enough. Got you. Okay. So, breaking down to the reason why I invited Cree, not just because she's cool people, because she is, but some of the reasons that I wanted to have her on the show specifically were, besides the above listed things from her pieced bio that I put together there, I've had the pleasure of doing music with Cree, along with watching episodes of the YouTube and Instagram show You Better Effin' Read, and conversations we've had on the way to music gigs or just practicing and stuff. I think I was able to see her passion for people of color, women's empowerment, and meaningful self-discovery specifically. And in those discussions of whatever the subject matter, I could see that on each one of those topics that she was very sincere and well-informed about many of the topics that we were talked about. So I thought, I'm always impressed by intelligent people, again, because I like the thought process, how people come to the conclusions they do. And I invite her out of respect for her, not just because she's a great music artist, which she is, but as a brilliant human being who I knew I can engage in dialogue and convey a point with, and she could do the same with great clarity and a unique perspective. So for people that I invite on the program, I like to have people who are great thinkers, who are not necessarily people who agree with everything I agree with, and I may not agree with everything they say or think, but we can always come to a consensus of a good standpoint of how we express ourselves. So I thought that she would be a fantastic person because I've heard her express many points, and I know that she's not intimidated by anything, and I know that she has a strong viewpoint, and I like to hear people with strong viewpoints. So that's part of the reason why I asked you to be on the program today, Miss Cree.
Thank you.
Oh, no worries. So opening up, I like to ask a couple icebreaker questions. Usually I only ask one, but when I was writing the first one, another one came to my mind. So I'm like, well, I don't have any parameters on the show. I can ask as many as I want, I guess. So
yeah, absolutely.
So our first icebreaker, if you will, and they don't have to necessarily be about anything specific or even be anything, deep. Could just be something silly. So the first icebreaker question I have for you here is, if you had to name the breakfast cereal cartoon character that best matches your personality, and why?
Breakfast cereal cartoon character.
Yes. So you got the Trix Rabbit.
Tiger.
Yeah.
The rabbit.
You got the toucan.
Yeah.
And even the off-brand cereals, the Toasty Oats.
Can I be the Quaker?
Really? You can definitely be the Quaker, but you gotta explain why on that one.
Because they're not okay, some of the Quakers sucked. Probably most of them, actually. But there were some real nigga Quakers
Okay.
who were like trying to liberate people.
Okay.
So I messed with them. But I learned that in school, and who knows if it's true or not? Because I also know they were like, yeah, we'll rescue you, but you have to sit at the back when we have church.
Right, right.
I'd be the Black Quaker Oats.
Oh, wow. So yeah, so you'd be Hezekiah the Quaker. Hezekiah,
Yes,
the Black Quaker.
exactly.
Okay.
I would be Hezekiah the Quaker, and that would be the name of my oatmeal, Hezekiah Quakers. AHS.
Yeah. And I imagine the look you would have in your face wouldn't be the excited look that the Quaker has now. It would be like, dude, I'm so tired of these people.
Right, like gang gang.
Right.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. No.
And I think I would have, if I saw Hezekiah's Quaker Oats, I probably would have to get some just because, why not? Because this has got to be a great story of how he ended up making Quaker Oats.
Right, how he ended up even there in the first place, identified as a Quaker.
Right.
Like how he even weaseled his way into that.
Right, I would definitely have to buy the product and look further into it. So yeah, I can vibe with you on the Black Quaker. So the second question here, in terms of an icebreaker, of course, I know Cree, so this is more just to get us familiar with Cree. For those of you who may not be familiar with her, and I suggest that even during this program, if you're listening to this, open up another tab on your computer and check out some of her music, as well as You Better Effing Read on Instagram and also on YouTube.com. So, second question here for you. If you lost your speaking voice, singing voice for an extended period of time, more than a month, and the only way you could communicate was through song lyrics and music, which artist or artists would you use to convey your message?
T.I. What?
T.I. would be your daily speaking. You'd use those songs to convey things you needed. Like if you wanted somebody to grab your shoes, you would use T.I.
Yes, because he just embodies most of my mission in life.
Okay.
The like Pat quote, I'm 5'9" with the soul of a 6'4".
Oh.
That's just, those are big facts.
Okay.
So, though, like my everyday, could somebody brush my teeth for me? I don't know. But if anyone ever tried me,
right,
I would have all the vocabulary I needed to make sure that we were clear on where we stood.
And I imagine that if you search hard enough, you could definitely find T.I. lyrics or songs that could convey a message like, can you help me find my keys? I think you could definitely find something that would help you express that thought to someone that you cared about. I think, okay. So
probably, yeah, somewhere.
Yes. It'd take a little bit more work, but you could definitely, it'd probably be hype too. So they would be more than happy to help you find your keys. If you
his beats slap.
Right,
so
right. Right.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got the Black Quaker. I'm calling Hezekiah for now, and we have, and we're saying T.I. is our voice of communication. If we were to lose our speaking voice or singing voice, what have you, he would help us communicate the things that we need on a daily basis. I could vibe with that, and I would actually, both of those, I would love to see Hezekiah's Oats, and I would definitely love to see just the morning. I wouldn't even have to see the whole day. Just the morning using T.I. lyrics. I would definitely be down with that. Because I know that.
Tip Harris.
Right. I know that would be dope. And little sidebar, while you were saying that, I remember the when I first met Cree, I think Justin, keyboard player, was telling me about Cree and music and stuff, and I looked online. And I thought it was the craziest thing because a lot of, if you were to see her, if you were to see her and not know anything about her, you would not imagine that so much of her existence is wrapped up in trap music. Like
so much of it, Jonathan.
You would
like
not.
They don't understand.
Right, and it's not jacking. It's 100% to the core. Yeah. That's who she is.
It's not performative.
Right.
When I realized one of my for when I feel like extremely misunderstood or emotionally hijacked.
Right.
My two go-to songs are "Motivation" by T.I. and "Power" by Kanye West.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's something to be said about trap music, especially about these people who are literally technically society's lowest rung people,
Hmm.
like poor black men, still talking big stuff.
Right.
Like like no matter what, they still talking about how tight they are, how raw they are, how much money they gonna get, how many girls they have. It's inspiring.
Right.
It's the gospel, low key.
That I could get with you on that. Now, the crazy thing about that is that I read somewhere that they were saying that people of color specifically often are more adept with music and or language because they have better visions for whatever reason. They are better visionaries of the things that they want and the things that they would like to have accomplished than their other counterparts. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true in all cases, but I will say that the lexicon used and the imagery used in a lot of the music that I listen to and the people that you talk to just on a regular everyday basis is way more colorful than anything I've heard from our counterparts, if you will. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I feel you and completely agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I could vibe with you there 100%. But yeah, that's if you don't know Cree, it's the craziest thing, and it was hilarious to me because it wasn't jacking, and like we did a couple songs where it was trap. It was just dope stuff, just dope stuff. Anyway,
Fun.
right. So on to the topic today. Like I said, for the month of April, our topic is there we go. Representation. Representation. We're going to be defining that as what? I had a definition for that. Did I? Did I even pull that? Representation, basically, someone who stands in a position, acting or speaking, not necessarily on your behalf, but in a manner that is similar to you. So in a manner similar being your gender or your ethnicity or religion, what have you. Just someone who you can kind of see yourself in. We'll call that representation. So we're speaking along those terms today. So the first question in regard to representation I have for you, Cree, is at what age did you begin to recognize yourself as an individual, i.e., different from your peers?
Well, I think I knew instinctively, like in middle school, that something was different because I didn't like there was this unwritten rule when all of the elementary schools merged that all of the black girls were supposed to become friends, and like no one like gave me that memo, so I just literally kept hanging out with Stacy and Nicole,
Right.
Because that's who I had been hanging out with for 6 years.
Right.
And the black girls tortured me about it, and like insult to injury was that the black boys thought I was cute. So it was just like a double 1-2 punch. So I didn't even have, but like the dichotomy spread even further because I'm hanging out with my friends, like I just use air quotes, like my white friends.
Right.
And it was great at school, but then when they would have parties, I would go and it would just be like they would like white suburban kids start drinking early,
Yeah.
and all they want to do is watch a movie, and I'm like, something's missing.
Yeah.
Like there's something else should be happening at these parties. So finally, one of the black boys who thought I was cute, we ended up going to this party, and it's just like in a basement on like the north side, like 90th and Capitol or something. And there's just music bumping, and I was like, oh, this is what I needed. Like I didn't even realize that this is a party to me.
Right.
And so at school I was hanging out with these white kids and not feeling completely seen, and then like being in black spaces and loving them, but like never being completely welcome because I didn't go to the MPS school and because of the way that I talked. And so that really forced me to create my own lane, really, for myself, where I just feel like I could show up completely as who I was. So I think it started when I was like 12 or 13. I started just kind of working to become myself.
Okay. I always find it interesting, to your point, not to cut you off there, sorry, but to your point, I always find it interesting how oftentimes people make blackness this huge monolithic thing where the continent of Africa is filled with many different countries and different villages and different peoples, different dialects and regions, completely different languages. So to believe that if you were to place all these people together in one room, that they would immediately become friends based solely upon their skin color is naive.
It's naive.
So
Yes, it's ridiculous.
right. So I mean, just because like there's a phrase that says all skin folk ain't my kin folk. So I can I'm like, it's amazing to me. Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how people do that. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the program, because I said this person who is a trap fan for real, in addition to what she does for a profession and how she carries herself, I'm like, there's definitely a story in terms of one's identity within this person, if none other. So
Yeah.
So
and like I'm equally a fan of like Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
Like and Gene Kelly, like Singing in the Rain slaps just as hard as fucking.
Yeah, and the crazy part about that, being a music fan myself, it's interesting to hear people's prejudices, for the lack of a better word, for different styles of music. Just like you said, the music that moves you, it all moves you. It doesn't necessarily matter what genre or who it is. It moves you in the same way, in the same manner. And I think, like, I remember hearing people talk about, oh, the song that made me cry, talking, Streisand, this or that. The first song that it was so beautiful that it shed a tear. It was an album. It was the Roots Come Alive album. And I actually cried because that song, it was so dope. The whole thing. It inspired, for real. Like, it was the dopest thing I had ever heard in my life. And from that point on, I went back and bought all their previous catalog and everything from that point forward. And that struck a chord with me, because I think at that time, no, I wasn't playing drums at that time, but it just spoke to me. So it was just a huge thing. So I think that it's very, 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 very imperative for people to understand that you can still have that same love for music as a whole and not be diminished with who you are. It doesn't make you less of who you are. So of course, when we're speaking about representation, that's very important to me. So like she said, trap music, Nuck If You Buck goes just as hard as Fred Astaire, and it does, because I defy it. I defy anybody to listen to Tom Petty's catalog and not get hyped. So that's just me.
Oh, big facts, Joe.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm like, the dude is cold for a reason. So hey.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Bon Jovi is they slap
for a reason, right? Yeah. So there's a reason why everybody knows all Green Day songs. So Black and White.
Yes.
So.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Man, I'm saying. So I did have a second part of that first question, but I figured you were going to answer it, and it was just, in what ways were you different? You spoke about just the necessity, and I think some situations like that, social situations specifically, do require that we form an identity within ourselves apart from the people that we're connected with. So I think that, like you said, 12 or 13, being in those social circles where you found yourself not necessarily identifying for one reason or another with the people that you were hanging with, it kind of necessitated you to develop, who are you as a person? Who am I apart from these groups? So, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, see, dope stuff there. Good people. I say it all every time for everybody that I have on the program, but I think that it's dope that I know the people that are good people even before I speak with them, but just when you get people on the show and you get to see them in a different perspective, you get to see them in a manner that you may not have spoken with them prior. So this is definitely one of those as well. So dope people, I'm telling you, man. Good stuff.
Right. No, I agree.
All right. So our second question here, we're still talking about representation. Who were some? Now I could have put this one. So we'll do this one. I have the questions in a different order, but we'll ask them, in a different order here. So, in a previous interview I saw on YouTube, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago you did, you spoke about the examples you had and have of individuals like your grandmother having 2 master's degrees coming from Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and your dad being the first black game warden in the state of Wisconsin. The question I had in regard to those things, do you think that there's any validity to the old adage, in order to achieve greatness or to be great, you have to see greatness or you have to witness greatness?
Oh my God, yes. When I pull up, when I was reading Ida B. Wells' autobiography, the only reason that she had the foresight to like go become a journalist in the southern United States in the 1800s was because she had parents like who were pouring into her that it was worthwhile to engage in reading and writing and contemplating the world around you.
Yeah.
And so I don't even remember what her parents necessarily did, but I do really believe that you can only see as far as the people who are rearing you allow you to see.
Yeah.
And like there's even this children's book about Harriet Tubman. I don't know if they pulled these facts as like true facts or not, but they talked about how her dad taught her how to run away, essentially, because she like as soon as she was like born, she was kind of rebellious, and so her mom was like, she's gonna get killed, and her dad was like, or we could teach her how to get away before she gets killed, and so that's kind of what he spent his time doing. So I do think parents play a huge part in like giving their children space, like making sure that they can see their kid, and then giving them space to be whatever they are seeing.
Yeah, and I think that's a dope thing. I hadn't thought about it to that degree, but like you were saying there, more so than even being in positions, you know, like if your father was a lawyer, then you have a good chance of being a lawyer, and that's great and everything because you can see that example. But like you said, in regard to Harriet Tubman, if you can have parents who can give you a vision much bigger than even themselves or even what you can imagine, I think that even having that vision being so far out can inspire you and can even be the greatness. I think there's a scripture that says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So to speak to a person, to give them a tangible, if you will, via faith, tangible object in terms of a goal that's so far out there is just as good as having an example sometimes. So, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because even like my grandma does have 2 masters, and my dad was the first black gay Mormon, and so in that and like showing up in these predominantly white spaces, they were like breaking barriers. But honestly, people were still functioning out of pretty safe parameters, you know?
Yeah.
Like education and like a 9 to 5. Like no one was doing anything that was risky, really big stuff.
Yeah.
So to like Harriet's dad to just be like, I'm going to release her, and if this is how she's gonna act, this is how she's gonna act.
Yeah. And I think just to have the ability as parents, I think it's a wonderful thing too, not just as parents, but as mentors or even figures of guidance, to be able to share, if you will, your fearlessness. I think that's a fantastic concept, that not only can you inherit, you know, physical traits, but you can inherit this fearlessness from your parents. If they are unafraid, you grow and learn to be unafraid. So I think that's 100% dope. 100% dope. So on the same line as that same question there, I just had one that I was listed as before, but I think it's a better placement to put it here. If you had to say, apart from those people that we mentioned, your grandmother and your dad, if you had to say in your early young adult life, so we'll say 13 to 19, 20-ish, if you had to say who were some early figures that helped you, better way, who are some early figures that you may have identified with, and they could be either people you're personally related to, personally knew, or even celebrities. Who are these people during that specific period of your life that you could identify with?
Well, for sure, I think that first off, in my early 20s, I found Angela Davis. Okay. That changed my life. And then when I went away to college to the University of Kentucky, I met a new type of black girl that I hadn't experienced in Wisconsin. Okay. And it was just, because I went to a predominantly white high school, there were probably like 10 of us. And I feel like we ran the gamut, but there's just distinctly remember meeting this girl in Kentucky. We're still friends, named Rebecca Daly. She's Dr. Daly now. Uh-huh. And we would would like go to a party that was like 3 hours away from campus, and we would have to leave at 5 in the morning because Rebecca had clinicals at 8.
Dang.
And so we would like be driving back, we'd be taking turns driving, and Rebecca would still be like doing her hair because like she's not about to go in there looking crazy. And she graduated, and she was like second in her class, and now she has her doctorate. We're almost 30, and I had never seen that. Like, I had never seen that type of black girl, and it was essentially like a Southern belle. Like, that's who I was dealing with, like a whole bunch of girls from Kentucky and Tennessee who just coveted the length of their hair, and like was extremely aesthetically driven, but also like had to make their families proud because they were like 4th generation AKAs.
Okay.
And so that inspired me a lot in terms of what excellence, like how much work it takes.
Yeah.
Because I had never seen, like when I was here, I didn't see people who looked like me who were interested in that type of stuff.
Right.
You know? So it was cool. Like Rebecca was cool, but since I'm not at all a Southern belle, it was more her work ethic that drove me. And then pairing that with Angela Davis is just always telling the truth, no matter what. Super. I think those molded me a lot.
Okay, so having the interactions with Rebecca in Kentucky, how did that affect, if it did affect at all, your relationships with black women or women in general? We'll say coming back to up north Wisconsin.
Well, it made it frustrating a lot of times. And I realized that a lot of the relationships that I was functioning out of, even up until like now, were out of convenience. And a lot of people around me were functioning out of fear. So it made me have to reevaluate like what I actually wanted to like out of this life. And then once you kind of get an idea of that, what do you need around you in order to get it? And it can't be like convenient relationships, which is actually for sure an epidemic in the black female community.
Okay.
Because when there's one other black girl in the room, you go talk to her.
Yeah.
Like, that's just common courtesy, you know? And then all of a sudden you're in this like 15-year relationship with someone, and you're like, wait, do we even like each other? Like, do we even have anything in common? How did this start? Oh yeah, there were only 2 of us, and that's what you're supposed to do, and kind of, and also that what you kind of want to do, because it makes you feel less like ostracized.
Right.
But yeah, they're friendships of convenience a lot of time, and I think they do us a huge disservice.
Yeah, I can definitely understand. It's not for at least the talking to the other black person in the room. That's not just the girls. That's black guys as well. Not.
Good to know.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not, it's for me, I always equated it to there's safety in numbers. So if something were to go down, at least I know, perhaps, not guaranteeing, but perhaps his hand won't be one of the ones that's attacking me. So
Right.
Hopefully.
Right, but you're still not even ever sure.
Right. I'm checking faces still. So
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, 100%. See, good stuff. So let's see here. I'm always interested in talking to people, and again, like I said about many of the people that I've had on the program before, the difficulty in asking people to be on a program is because I know that I could invite you back every month, and I know it could still be a good conversation on whatever the topic can be, because when you pick people who are solid in their positions and who can articulate a point and who are good thinkers, it makes conversations easy. So I think that it's super dope, man. So
Yeah.
and just talking to people who have traveled, it definitely makes conversations about different topics more interesting, because they do bring a perspective that is unique to just them having gone to the spaces that they've gone to. Like the whole Kentucky thing, I never would have considered that for a couple reasons. Number one, I am not a black female. I am not a female at all. So to consider that because I know exactly what you were talking when you were talking. I knew exactly what you were talking about. Just this different type of blackness, because I had my experience. I did MPS from pretty much the time that we moved here from Chicago. So just, and you have your certain people. I was thankful that a lot of the friends that I hung out with, we were kind of like minded, but you do get to interact with some cast that's kind of rowdy, and being a young black male, there's a lot of other wild stuff going to the different schools that I went to, that I could have just as easily as I did not have entertained, whatever else was going on, wild stuff that was going on. And it would have been like I I had an epiphany when I graduated high school, because I didn't really look toward college, just because I thought a bunch of different things, and I believed a bunch of different things that weren't necessarily true regarding college, and regarding you don't have the money, whatever you didn't take certain classes or whatever. But anyway. So I believe that rhetoric, and I think that the funny thing was that when I graduated, I felt like I was a man without a country, so to speak, because I didn't have a college plan, and I knew I was intelligent, but I knew that I also wasn't going to be a street dude. I wasn't selling dope, so I'm like,
right.
And I'm like, I don't fall into anybody's plan. Like, if I were to sell dope, then the plan is you sell dope until you get arrested or whatever.
Right.
So,
what's the actual plan?
Yeah, so there's a 10-year plan for that too. So I think that it was much to your point, just to meet different people who are black just like you, but not black just like you, because they have a different experience. It definitely opens your world up, and I thought, yeah, I can definitely agree with you with your story about Brittany. Dang it, I'm bad with names. Rebecca, son of a gun. I knew I was gonna mess it up. But Rebecca from Kentucky. So I think it's definitely a different thing. So hey, man, see, I'm glad that I asked the question. Okay, so we're still on the topic of representation. Of course, we talked about who inspired us, or who we could identify with as a young adult. And if you had to, you may or may not now, you may be settled in now, but if you had to say in your adult life now, who would be the person that you can see yourself in? And immediately as I'm asking this question, I'm leaning toward Miss Michelle Obama, but that may not be your choice.
No.
Okay, good, because I'm like, again, I am not a black female, but I can identify with a lot of her story, because I know that black experience either firsthand in some pieces, or third party. So if you had to say that the same question, someone that you identified with as your adult self now, who would that be? And that could be, of course, personal or professional or even celebrity.
Sure. Well, I'm really obsessed right now with a narrative around unapologetic blackness.
Okay.
That doesn't need like bullying.
Right.
Because I feel like I see way too much of that online, and it really just feels like, to me, when I watch especially black feminists do it, it's just like the bitter girl from high school,
right, who
just has finally found some language, and so now she's using it to hurt other people.
Right.
So I'm all for the unapologetic, but not for the unnecessary clapbacks.
Right.
So in that, I'm really the first black woman ever won the Hugo Award for sci-fi in 2018. And the Hugo Awards are like the Grammys for sci-fi.
Okay.
And I want to be N.K. Jemisin. Her name's Nora, and I just want to. I love everything about her. I love how she shows up in spaces. Her stories are brilliant. Like, it's like one of the first times. I mean, we have Octavia Butler, of course, but it's like one of the first times in science fiction where we have literature that is in a fantastical world, still like giving narrative around oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's basically like people with superpowers who are oppressed. And I think it's the whole adage is around like that's what black people are.
Yeah.
So I just, and her acceptance speech was just brilliant about how much work it took and how all of these publishers turned her away because they said there's no way that anybody non-black is going to read a sci-fi book by a black woman. And now she has the award for her trilogy. And I just, how do you decide that, and you've never seen it before for real, that you're gonna write sci-fi? Like, the concept of writing sci-fi already feels daunting. Like, you're creating whole new worlds and planets and universes. But then also, you've never seen anybody like you do it. All you got is like Tolkien. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I love her.
Yeah, that is definitely, to be a world builder is to be a creative is a fantastic thing, but to be a creative to that degree where your worlds are built upon themselves further and further and further, that's a wild thing to do.
Wild, and she did it the best.
Yeah,
like, she got the award. So I can't even. I'm obsessed with her right now. I read that book back in January, and it's all I think about.
Okay, so what's her name again, just so we get it right?
Her pen name on her book is N.K. Jemisin.
M.K. as in Monica K. Jemisin?
N as in like Nutcracker.
Nutcracker. So N.K. Jemisin.
Yes.
Okay. Dope stuff. Dope. So for those who are avid readers, if you're not checking out You Better Effing Read, you should definitely on your own check out N.K. Jemisin. So
yes.
Okay, see, I was a big fan of reading. I don't know what happened. I'm a guy, probably.
Well, you have children. Too.
Well, no, I stopped reading long before that. Okay. Thanks for the cover, though. I appreciate this. See, that's good people looking to take a look at ours. Yeah, I promise. Okay, so. Still on the same topic here. I have another question here. If you had to give, here we go. What advice do you give those who you teach or those who you may be in a mentorship role with regarding options when they don't necessarily feel like they fit in? So when they find themselves in spaces where they are the only woman, black person, where they just don't feel like they are a part of what's going on. What advice do you give those people to give them hope or to give them direction?
Sure. Well, I really believe in action.
Okay.
So I really try really hard to show up fully all the time. Mm-hmm. So, and that just means as myself, because I really believe I'm also entitled to have like moods and feelings. Yeah. So that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily showing up like, hey, and getting everybody high fives.
Right.
But I am extremely passionate person. I'm relatively loud, and that's how I show up, and that has to be okay. Yeah. And at first, it makes some people uncomfortable, but really around children, and especially like middle schoolers, I think they find it refreshing that no one is like performing in front of them. I'm not performing. This is really how I show up. Right. And so, I want everyone to be brave enough to spend time with themselves to figure out who they are in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then once they've got that down, I want them to be brave enough to go do that in front of other people, And so one of my biggest frustrations actually is that I can't, like, all of the live performers that I'm obsessed with, I can't, there's something in me, like that amount of vulnerability, I can't release for some reason. Yeah. Like, I love all the extra shit that Lady Gaga does. Like, I live for it. I can't get enough of it. But when I'm on stage, I just freeze, and it's like a 5-year goal to be able to release it and just be able to be that present and vulnerable on stage. Yeah. I can do it in a lot of other mediums, though. Yeah. Not when I'm singing.
Okay. Reminds me of I was talking to a cousin of mine this past summer, and we were talking about language and stuff, and she was asking me if I spoke any other languages, and I'm like, nah, I don't speak any languages or whatever. And she was like, the thing that helped her with, I want to say might have been Spanish or Japanese that she was learning to speak. Okay. And she said what helped her the most was she was unafraid to be bad. She was unafraid to have her accent be terrible and have native speakers correct her, because in doing that, the native speakers not only helped her learn how to say the whatever phrase it was properly, but they kind of respected her for being vulnerable, as you said, taking that step and to expose that level where, people could laugh at you and people could point at you and make fun of you. So I think that's something that I still strive for in other areas of my life, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast here, to make yourself more vulnerable, because I think a lot of good things come from it. For that cousin I was speaking to, she was able to learn the language, but I think for other people, you can definitely overcome different barriers that would be good just at that place where you are, but also for things in the future, because you never know, because that's how life works.
It's genuinely I consider it a superpower.
Yeah.
And I don't I don't ascribe to the Christian faith, so to speak, but I do love how consistently vulnerable Jesus was.
Yeah.
Like, that he was always just, this is how it's gonna be.
Yeah.
And when Judas came and he was like, just do what you came to do.
Right.
And then he literally just died naked in front of everyone. Like, I believe in that. And
yeah.
It's funny because my husband speaks Portuguese and Spanish, and he learned them also, and he told me, like, if I was ever serious about learning a language, that's what I would have to do. I'd have to be willing to look stupid.
Yeah. And that's a difficult proposition. I think, especially, I'll say especially just because it involves me, but it may not be unique to just people like myself. People of color, I think it's even more difficult because I think innately we are proud people. I think that we don't come from, genetically speaking, and I know I'm talking on my behind here, genetically and I think biologically speaking, we are not built that way to be
vulnerable.
Right. We're not built to be, oh, I'm afraid. We're not built that way. We're built to, I will jump off this cliff and be terrified, but you'll never know it. I won't give you that satisfaction. So.
Exactly. Every time.
Right.
Yeah, it's a huge hindrance.
Yeah.
On progress for us. But yeah, and it's the whole Black excellence thing.
Oh yeah.
So often we don't see people's struggle to the moment.
Yeah.
We just see them emerge as this magically fluent, PhD person. And it would help if we saw or knew how it was beforehand.
Yeah, like they say, everybody can see how beautiful the roses are, but they don't know the literal crap you had to go through to become that rose.
Yeah, literal.
Literal.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, telling you good stuff from good people. Now, the next one here, I knew specifically that this one was going to be one that you could expound on, although any person of color, I imagined, even from khaki all the way to, onyx, you can definitely identify with our next question here. We're talking about code switching. Right. Code switching. So for those who don't know, in linguistics, this is the definition given from Wikipedia, but we'll delve into how we're using it here. For our next question, in linguistics, code switching or language alternation occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages or language varieties. In the context of a single conversation, multilinguals, speakers of more than one language, sometimes use elements of multiple languages when conversing with each other. Now, for our topic here of code switching, we're talking about same language, same dialect, just tweaked for maximum effect. I think that every person of color who chooses to navigate this world outside of the people who are just like them have to learn to be effective at code switching, or you'll be frustrated to no end. So, using the above as a reference in regard to code switching and how we know code switching works, how do you use code switching effectively in the different circles in which you operate and still maintain the you of yourself?
Yes. Well, my husband says I slip most deeply into Ebonics when I'm talking to my brother. So that's I think that's the space where I just get super excited, and the nuances of Blackness that fascinate me the most, I think, also inherently fascinate my brother, and I don't know if that's because we grew up in the same house.
Could be.
But that we just, the rapport is wonderful, and it's I mostly do it pretty seamlessly regardless of whatever crowd I'm in front of.
Right.
So, like, I sing to first graders on Mondays and Tuesdays. I sing jazz standards to them.
Okay.
And I sing a Tisket a Tasket to them, and I give them context around Ella Fitzgerald. And then the part in the song where the people say, "Is it green?" You say, "No, no, no, no." And then I tell them, I was like, put a little stank face in it, you know. And the white teachers would be like, "Huh, what's she talking? She's so funny." And
oh boy.
Right, exactly. But it's hard to like try to maintain the like proper Western societal speech when you're talking about someone as yours as Ella Fitzgerald, you know?
Right.
So I really I don't ever question whether I'm being myself or not based on how I'm speaking to the person that I'm speaking to, because my biggest goal is to make sure they understand where I'm coming from.
Right.
And if I'm code switching, it's to make it more comfortable for us to be able to have the conversation. Versus me maintaining some type of credibility to some invisible pact that I have with some people.
Right.
Like, the whole goal is to have a comfortable connection with the person that I'm speaking to. And so I think that's how I maintain being myself. It's like telling the truth, whether you're doing it in Ebonics or whatever it is that we're not doing when we're speaking. When we're not speaking Ebonics, is still the truth. So that's all that actually matters above everything, and that's what I kind of try to just commit to, is the truth all the time. It can be exhausting, but you know.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't considered the use of code switching, if you will, to make it more easy for your audience, if you will, to jump on board, because I think that, generally speaking, again, back to people of color, we don't have a problem with people who don't speak the same dialect of English as we do. We generally can pick up context clues and keep it pushing. But oftentimes when you speak to other people, they act as if like you grew a second head or something out of your neck while you're speaking, just because you choose to use a different, vernacular.
Exactly.
And it's
degrading.
Yeah, it's so unnecessary. So yeah, I can definitely agree with that. See, man, just
because I think that's why it started. Like I my mom is an educator, so I grew up learning to speak properly. I just used air quotes.
Right.
But then you go to your cousin's house who live on 40th and Congress.
Right.
And then you're talking white.
Yeah.
So you learn real quick how to switch it up just so that everyone is comfortable, including you.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a theory on talking white. I always said that to me, when I say what is talking white, I never thought that talking white was in regard to speaking proper English. I always thought it was in the manner of making everything sound like a freaking question. I never dug that.
Valley girl?
Just
you mean
or even in Wisconsin, a couple words like when they say milk and big, I can't stand it. It irks my soul, man. I just want a glass of milk. It's disgusting.
Say milk.
Right. It's got an I for a reason. You just make everything disgusting. I don't even want it anymore.
Oh my gosh, that does sound nasty.
Yeah, say my big, my book big. What is a big?
Stop it.
Yeah, so. But yeah, so those things to make that instantly. So I always equated it's not in using proper English. It's making everything sound like it's not a complete sentence. I'm going there. Well, are you?
Wait, there?
Yeah.
Stop it. Yes,
right. So yeah, it eggs me. So when I did telemarketing for a while, so it was my purpose and my goal to maintain my negrosity. That's a word you can use now, and still
I love that.
and still convey the message.
I love that.
Right,
Perfect.
right. So okay, see, we're moving on pretty well here. Along the line, of course, we're still talking about representation, and we're speaking with Cree Myles. And our next question here is kind of along the line of current topics here. Still speaking about representation, because I think that it's an important conversation to have. And of course, if you're watching this, whenever you're watching this, you may watch this when it's posted, or you may watch it 10 years from that date. But I think that if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it on the YouTube page or the Facebook page or wherever you hear this. Respond back, email me. We'll be glad to talk. So the question that I have here, like I said, it's kind of current news related. In the wake of the recent and unfortunate death of Mr. Nipsey Hussle, to what degree does seeking to be a positive image and being the representation of forward positive movement put you in a position where safety could become an issue?
Yeah, I think it instantly puts you in a position where, like, depending on how far you're willing to go with it. I remember I was reading Asada Shakur's biography like 2 years ago, and I don't remember what made me come to this revelation, but I was in the middle of the book, and I like put it down, and I was like, you really, like, when it comes to this stuff, you really have to be willing to die for your beliefs.
Literally.
Like, that's, you literally have to be willing to die.
Yeah.
And that overwhelmed me so much because, like, we idolize the celebrities around us, of course. Like, we idolize the Beyoncés and the Jay-Z's, and Rihanna just got her masters to her music or whatever.
Yeah.
And so everyone's excited, but then it's also like, but big facts, this is still upholding the capitalist society that systematically oppresses brown people. So even though we've got some brown people to look to, Michelle Obama is charging like $250,000 per speaking engagement.
Wow.
Like, good for her for getting that coin, but you're actually not helping liberate us as a whole. So, are we willing to risk it all to do that?
Yeah.
Because that's when the government gets angry.
Yeah.
And that's when people start getting hurt. So, that's all and it's funny because before Nipsey passed, I saw like that post back in February, like, Nipsey's doing a documentary on Dr. Sebi. If you know what that means, then be super careful. I mean, send him energy and pray for him. And I was like, bro, like, they really, like, did Dr. Sebi really have all the juice that hard that this is about to happen like this?
Yeah.
And then he died, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. And I don't consider myself like a huge conspiracy theorist by any means.
Right.
But that caused pause for me, for sure.
Yeah. And I think to your point that I found same thing. We heard the same article regarding the Dr. Sebi and his and the funny thing is the documentary wasn't going to be about the man, specifically. It was just about the trial that he had in the 80s regarding having a cure for AIDS. And I think that the interesting thing was, to your point, much like you said and much like I believe, but to quote the great Negro laureate Dave Chappelle, who said, "What is a black man without his conspiracy theories?" I think that in regard to existence as a whole, and this is a big arcing theory, we're still on representation, but I think that in regard to the earth as a whole, people don't die unless we start talking about taking the power away from money. Then people die. So when they were talking about Dr. Sebi, I'm like, yeah, that's important, but I don't think that's the reason why someone would come after him. They would only come after him when you talk about taking the power of money away from those who have the power of money. When you invest in yourself, when you talk about ownership, and when you talk about autonomy for yourself and for your people, that's when people start getting upset. That's when people, when you talk about planting gardens and having people, growing their own food, that's when feathers get ruffled. So
Yes.
yeah. So to that point, I definitely could see along those lines where people end up getting hurt. Dr. King, no exception. When you make a speech about poor people and you say that the war is not really on black and white, it's on poor people, they don't like to hear those conversations.
They don't like to hear that. They really don't.
Right.
And even just the way that the Black Panther Party was dismantled.
Yeah.
It was just like that's because they were getting stuff done.
Yeah.
They were for sure scared because poor people were getting fed every day.
Yeah. And it was
crazy.
Yeah, it was never about a fear of black people. The funny thing is that I read, it was an article talking about true power and true greed. It was saying that true power doesn't necessarily care what color you are, doesn't really care what God you pray to, don't care really who you sleep with or who you don't sleep with. What they're concerned about is the power. They want money. They want people who have power. They want more power. And if money happens to get you more power, then they want more money. But the key is they want power and control. They want that. So
yes.
I think it's very interesting. So yeah, we're still on representation here because the reason I asked that question regarding Nipsey Hussle is because I think that not to that degree where death could be a very real possibility. I think that in all of our lives, when we start to make changes for the positive in our life, even if it's something as simple as I want to lose weight, or I want to stop smoking, or I want to go back to school, you do get pushback from the people that are close to you. And I think that in regard to the question to how do you still push forward to be a positive representation when you get that pushback for just doing good? You're making good for yourself. You're not impacting anybody. You just decide, I want this for me. And people have so much to say. And I thought, in regard to Cree, where does the Cree fit in, if you will? Where does Cree fit? So for me,
no, I mean, but it's like that for like I'm giving birth to my son at home.
Yeah.
And everybody I've seen like church faiths left and right.
Oh yeah.
Like this has anything to do with anybody. When I stopped eating meat.
Yeah.
Everyone. Well, for what? But I'm not asking you to stop.
Exactly.
You just asked me why. I told you why, and now you're uncomfortable with the truth.
Right.
So now you don't have to argue with me. Argue with yourself.
Right. Because at the end of the day, you're still not going to eat meat. You're not going to go around people's houses knocking forks out their hands. So.
Right. No, I'm not. You, but I'm not eating it.
Right. To that same degree, and that's again because we're talking about representation, but I think that's a very real one. Like I said, it's not necessarily on that grand level, but just simple choices you make. I remember, much to your point when you said giving birth at home, we considered it, but we were going to a birth center, which is kind of along the same lines, just at a facility. But people were so I did tons and tons of research, but people were so taken aback by it because they've been fed the same thing for so long, or they believe the same thing without researching it, that anything foreign seems like you having your baby in the back of a Denny's. That's how they treat you.
Right, bro. Like in the bathroom.
Right. Like you might as well have said like, oh yeah, me and Brian, we're gonna go to Subway and we're gonna have a sub and we're gonna have a baby in the back. We're gonna wash it off with the hand sanitizer.
And then we go bring him back.
Right, like fam.
Right. It's just people really function out of fear.
Yeah.
Sincerely. They really don't know that they're functioning out of fear, which makes it even more of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then they swear, and so then when you question it, they don't even know why they believe it in the first place. So then they just get mad.
Right.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah. When all they have to say is, okay, cool.
Right. Okay, cool. And if you care enough, do some research on your own time.
Right. That's exactly where I'm at. Because I'm like, just for even me, like it blew my mind with my first son, Eli, the only son I have. Just the research that I found, and it wasn't like I didn't have to take a medical program. It was simple research you can find if you just use your search engine. It doesn't take
the whole internet.
Right.
Exactly.
You don't have to be a professor. All you have to do is search for the things you're interested in. You'll get answers, and you can double check and triple check. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
super sad.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think we talked about. Because the whole purpose of some roses are red or anything that I do, without intention, it wasn't my intention to do it this way. But everything that I'm driven about is about identity, because I think it's important to know who you are, because what identity does is it tells you who you are, but most importantly, it tells you who you are not. So
Yes.
I think that in regard to identity, the biggest one is, as I grew up, I found that a lot of people, like you said, operated out of fear, and it doesn't do anyone any favors to operate out of fear, because number one, you don't find answers to things, and you don't grow, because fear, like I said, what's the opposite of love? It's not hate, it's fear. And the reason is it's a
Yes.
direct opposite, because what love does is it branches out, it becomes more open, and fear does the
Mm-hmm.
exact opposite. It makes us retreat and withdraw within ourselves. So yeah,
Yes.
100%, 100% fear based living. You can't do it. It won't sustain
Can't
you.
you can't do it, and it's super contagious.
Oh yeah.
So like you gotta low key kind of stay away from it too.
Yeah.
And it's not even on some disrespectful stuff, because like it served its purpose specifically to our people for a long time.
Right.
Like you had that was the survival technique. But we're living in a different era,
Yeah.
so you don't have to be afraid of everything.
Right.
You just don't.
Yeah.
Especially not the truth.
Yeah. And I think that even to your point where you were talking earlier, for me, in terms of religion or spirituality, I think that when I decided that I wanted to learn more, I did my research. Having coming from a Christian background, being a Christian still now,
Mhm.
but to learn things, being unafraid to be challenged, to read and to dissect different religious texts, both Christian and whatever other religion, and to
Mhm.
and to read it with the notion that what I believe may be challenged and may be wrong. So I
Yeah.
I approached it with that, and I think that I grew immensely from being unafraid and taking that vulnerability step, and I think that it rewarded itself in me gaining lots of information. So not that
Yes.
not that anyone has to subscribe to what I believe, but I think that you should definitely take that step in regard to all areas of your life: your spirituality, your wellness, your health, your
Yes.
mental health, your overall whole. Because you can't fear serves as a purpose. It doesn't serve to live in it. It's like a light flashing to tell you to go left or right, not to
Mhm.
stare at the light.
Yes.
So
Oh my God. Yes.
yeah.
Not just. Oh my God.
Don't just stand there and stare at the light. The fear light's on. I know you're supposed to be doing something.
Right. Do get around it.
Right.
But yes, you're not fear. Yes.
Right. Don't just stare at it like, oh, I'm afraid. Like, yeah, but move.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
They always say that they say that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the willing to act despite it. So there you go.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, man. So we have come down to the very very last question on this the April episode of Some Roses Are Red, where our topic is representation. Subtopic being,
Woo-hoo.
how do I fit in? We're speaking to Cree Myles, of course, and our last question, similar to the previous question about forward positive movement, where safety could become an issue. This one says, how would you advise those looking to be a good representative of their neighborhoods and a beacon of light to those same neighborhoods, having achieved or having moved out of those neighborhoods and having gained some level of success, however you define it? How would you advise those looking to be a good representative of those neighborhoods and a beacon of light to do so while still being cautious of those who, frankly, are not happy about their success? So, how would you advise people to move within those spaces, knowing that everybody's that's smiling ain't happy?
Yes. Well, I think that first of all, surround yourself with people who are happy,
Mm-hmm.
or at least know how to get happy, and know like just have a general emotional health about them,
Yeah.
that you can go recharge if you need to. And I think staying honest with people, and staying vulnerable with them, it's like the people, like the community that you left and come back to.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, I think, is super huge, and like no pandering. Like you don't need to like act or do things that are relatable. If you're relatable, you're relatable.
Right.
If you're not relatable anymore, then you actually need to sit down and examine why not. Is it because of this immense amount of growth that you've experienced?
Right.
Or is it because you're being an asshole?
Right.
Like, those are so. I think that that's important, and just knowing that big facts. A lot of people just aren't going to be happy.
Yeah.
Like, and they're not going to be happy for you. Like, there's, so much has happened, I think, in my life, and I've lost people because I'm happy.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just because of varying decisions that we've made, you know, and they're based off of how we interpreted our previous life decisions. Like, you can't keep going into the same store and expecting completely different merchandise. They have a brand.
Right.
If you really want something different, you have to go somewhere different.
Right.
And so I think that's huge, and you can't internalize it either, which is kind of hard, but like a lot of times I think we kind of ask for things in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that I had a friend around me who wasn't really happy, and so since she wasn't happy, she wasn't really happy for me.
Right.
And I had been asking for years, like, because we've been friends for 15, 20 years, like years, like,
right.
I need something to move. And so it finally moved. Like, we've grown apart immensely, and I think our friendship is basically over. But I was feeling some type of way because I felt like it's finished and I was misunderstood.
Yeah.
But then, like, God was like, you said you wanted this to be over. Like, you didn't.
Right.
You didn't say that you had to make sure that she was crystal clear about how you felt about her. You said you wanted her to leave. She's gone.
Right.
So move on. And so I think, like, maintaining focus is huge. Like, why are you here? People should not be able to rattle you. When you're clear on your purpose about anything, whatever else is happening around you is you're Ray Charles.
Yeah.
You have no idea, and you're focused. I think that those are the key things: knowing who you are, being willing to be vulnerable with that, and then trying not to absorb the crap, which I know is hard, but it's powerful if you can do it.
Right. I agree with you 100%. When you were saying that, I was thinking, or also when I wrote the question, for me, the one example that I had of that to be a beacon of light, I think for me it spoke to me in regard to a lot of previous relationships that I had where you meet somebody who's attractive for whatever reason, physically, whatever, and for me, I'd hang out with these girls and you realize immediately, I would realize this will not last. This will not. We are not compatible. Yes, she looks good. Yes, I look good. Whatever. But I don't think this is going to be compatible. So then you make that choice, like you said. Do I stay with this person because they look like what I want, or do I tell them the truth and know what will happen? So, of course, what I began to do is just tell them the truth, and of course, just like you said in regard to your friend, they slowly start falling by the wayside. But what's left is your integrity. You still have to stand on the foundations of who you are.
Yes.
So yeah.
And when you have a good sense of who you are, regardless of what's happening around you or what they're saying or whatever box they're putting you in, because humans love to box.
Oh yeah.
Like, that we got to figure out where you're from.
Yeah.
What your race is, what your gender is. Like, all of that has to be clear
right.
in the beginning. But when you just kind of relinquish that and just know that you're going to show up how you show up, and if it's celebrated, cool. If it's not, you'll go to the party down the street.
Right.
It's liberating.
Oh yeah.
And then you also get a sense of how much power you have over your life in the first place. Like, you kept letting these things happen to you, and if you were just being clear in your purpose in the first place and not being afraid of it, how much further you could be.
Yeah. Very, very true. 100% true. If you can stand on who you are, it makes it a lot easier. Now, getting to the point where you can stand on who you are, that's the tricky part. That's the representation we're talking about. To see someone who's in those positions, or to look at yourself and realize you want to be in those positions, that's the difficult part. But once you're there and you stand in the you of who you are, a lot of other stuff will start falling by the wayside. And it may not be comfortable, but it's necessary.
It's necessary, and it's truth.
Yeah.
And nothing, like, that's more important than anything.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, we have the people on the program who are fantastic and awesome people for the ways that I know them, but through this program, I'm finding out even more stuff, and I like these people even more than I did before. So, Cree, you've reached that status where I like you even more than I liked you before. So dope people, wonderful, fantastic people. So, of course, we're speaking to Cree Myles. That was our last question, and as we always do for the program, since people are filled with other projects and other endeavors that they have going on, apart from your single "Crave Me," which you can find on most of the major retailers if you're looking to pick up some of her music or check it out, you can check it out on YouTube as well. I'll put a link to that on this program. But in addition to the music, what can you tell us about what's going on in your world with You Better Effing Read and any other projects you got going on? So we'll give you some time to let loose and expound. Shameless self-promotion.
Sure. Well, right now I really am focused more than anything on building a good catalog of book reviews.
Okay.
Like, I would ideally like to be a place where people can go to get literature from underrepresented authors. I do read a lot of books by Black women, but I read a lot of books by brown people in general.
Okay.
And so that's my thing, and it helps my brain.
Okay.
So it's just like, it's fun for that too. So yeah, that's what I'm on right now, and I have to give birth in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's gonna be
keeps me busy.
Yeah, that'll keep you pretty busy. So where can we find You Better Effing Read?
Sure. So You Better Effing Read has a YouTube channel, and it's literally You Better and then the letter F and the letter N, Read. And then I also have an Instagram page by the same name with all of the same, more content, because I put pictures up there as well. And then all of the reviews that are on YouTube are also on Instagram TV. So they're all both places.
Okay, so that's Instagram TV and YouTube and You Better Effing Read. And of course, I'll have a link to that on the page here. In addition to the music or the interviews or anything you're interested in, as well as hair tips. If you have a video that you're watching and you see a hairstyle that you like, you can definitely contact her on one of those social media platforms. I'm pretty sure she'll reach out to you and explain her hair care regimen in regard to those styles specifically, or any other topic you may have. I think, right. So I thank you 350 million %. I'm always spouting out percentages for coming on the spouting out percentages. Thank you for coming on the program and indulging me with all the many questions in regard to representation, and for just having a solid perspective and being a great guest to come and talk on the program here. So again, this is Cree Myles, and I'll leave you with the final word, if you will.
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My final word is just the standard Maya Angelou quote: when people show you who they are, believe them.
Yes, definitely. Maya Angelou, good stuff. So this has been another episode of Some Roses Are Red. I thank you very much for checking in with us, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Hi, this is John for Some Roses Are Red. Every first and third Monday of the month from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., we're live on YouTube Live and Facebook Live. Join us as we explore a new topic each show, and feel free to chat with us live on either platform as we explore the many facets of interpersonal relationships and how to navigate those interactions while keeping those relationships intact. Again, at Some Roses Are Red Live every first and third Monday at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Hope we talk to you soon. 797.